We live in a fast-paced and hectic world where it's easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and out of control. How do you manage all the competing pressures without losing sense of yourself? How do you stay focused enough to not only plot a path, but follow it? Welcome to Master Your Life, a show that offers inspiration, insight, and intelligence, as well as success stories from many walks of life that can show you how you can control your own destiny. Our knowledgeable and entertaining host and her guests give practical advice that you can use every day in the quest to master your life. Now, here's your host, Leaha Mattinson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's show. I'm so excited to have all of you joining us today from wherever it is you are on this beautiful, wonderful planet that we are all inhabiting. I am very excited to introduce my guest for today, Steve Scholl. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to have Steve on the show because he is doing wonderful things in the world. And I think we're really looking to leadership all over the planet for how are they contributing back and how are they making this planet a better place to live. And so Steve is an exemplary human being doing this behind the scenes with his work in a business called Community Shield. So Steve, I'm going to let you explain what is Community Shield. What are you guys up to in the world? Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Happy to. So when COVID first came to light, we're all concerned, the entire population of the world. My business partner and I were looking for things we could do to help. So we started investigating many different things. We ended up creating a new company called Community Shield. And from an overall standpoint, we deal in telemedicine. We deal with some biocides and some lights that do kill COVID, part of the mitigation plan, the overall mitigation plan. Telemedicine deals with testing, home testing. And then we also deal with some therapeutics and nutraceuticals that we found pretty interesting as it dealt with COVID and a myriad of other things regarding health.
So you guys have been around for quite a while. Prior to COVID, you were producing things to make the world a better place. And then when COVID hit, there was a rapid escalation in the stuff that you were bringing forth to the world. Is that kind of how it went?
Exactly. We've been in business over 20 years. And I can say, quite honestly, when COVID hit, it got our attention. It got everybody's attention, right? I remember literally closing down the office at noon right after lunch because of the news reports and you've got to close down and get out of there. It was a very, as we all lived through, a very sobering and surreal event to live through, and, kind of feeling helpless, but then understanding that, if all of us do something, then, a lot of great things could happen. So that's kind of how the seed was planted.
Yeah. And so with your prior history, you brought of the 19 years prior to COVID, you brought that all forward into this new manifestation of, really being able to look at how can you take all that knowledge and wisdom and expertise and translate it into usable products for today's consumer who's really looking for dealing with fear, anxiety, and of course, the real world virus, which we've had viruses forever and people have not responded to them in the way that they did with this one. So I agree with you. It's been a wake-up call to the world, but here we are 12 months later or 13 months later in some cases, and people are still grappling, maybe even more so now than ever, with this really big fear about being sick. Can you speak to that, Steve?
Yes. No one's immune to the fear. What we did is, try to channel that fear by using our existing contacts, doing research, making some investments in things that look interesting and promising, kind of a multi-prong approach just based on our experience. And I would say the primary focus or the most successful focus was that of our contact base. People we'd done business with before, know in different fields, in medical and in chemical and communications and all these things that we started to put together to really try to help. And then it takes all of us to do it, all of us to contribute. And again, that was the only thing that we felt that was at our fingertips that we could start to generate some progress using all of those things put together. So it wasn't instantaneous. I would say that, first real progress was, April, May last year, which took a month or two to get ramped up and understand, who has it, what is it doing? We started in the testing area, understanding all the tests, what did they mean? Should we test, should we not? And then it kind of grew out of that testing environment, spreading all the way down to the vaccine that we now have today.
And so in your engagement of your community, that's what it sounds like you were doing, is pulling and drawing upon the community that you already had in existence for this 20 years plus, and trying to meet the needs of people in real time as they developed on the ground. One of the things I thought when we were talking prior to this podcast is that you have a really special set of skills around dealing with fear. Because you in your life have had some circumstances that could have created fear, but that you actually handle fear sort of a different way. And so I'd love it if you'd share a story about maybe some situations where you've actually, been in fairly fearful situations, because what I think is interesting is that you maybe found the virus kind of a fearful thing, but the circumstances that you've actually, faced and challenges you faced in your prior life doing some of your eventful things would certainly not, I wouldn't have gone, wow, Steve in this role as animal tamer would now be afraid of the virus. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. So, maybe you can talk about that.
Well, initially, I have an extremely keen interest in reptiles, and primarily venomous reptiles. That certainly extends to other animals. And when dealing with venomous reptiles, and basically what I was doing is working with 3 different pharmaceutical companies, collecting venoms, breeding snakes, and to see if the babies had the same attributes as the parents as far as venom profiles. And then that was taken into synthesization, hard to say, so that they were synthesizing the venoms. It's interesting, all of us know what blood thinners are, like warfarin, different things like that. Well, warfarin is basically rattlesnake venom. It takes the anticoagulant properties of rattlesnake venom, isolates it, purifies it, puts it in the right strength, and that thins our blood a little bit. Many people get their coagulation factor tested when they go to the doctor. That's another form of rattlesnake venom that's used in that. And there are about 9,000 different pharmaceuticals that actually have the pure elements of venoms from reptiles, insects, spiders, etc., that we all use on a daily basis. We kind of all take that for granted, but those of us behind the scenes are, working on, what that does for the medical community. I work primarily on Alzheimer's, AIDS, different blood typing, and things like that, both with small mammals and with reptiles. And then talking about the fear factor, that's pretty interesting because, I perceive people's fear of a venomous reptile. So you come across a rattlesnake or a copperhead or something, viper on the trail. Well, people are afraid of that. I view it as, I know where it is.
Yeah. I
mean, I'm just as afraid of it when I don't know where it is as anyone else, right?
Oh, okay. Because I'm picturing this Indiana Jones, stuff falling out of the sky, Temple of Doom, and there you're walking in. It's all, gunslinger. You're cool about it all. But no, okay. Only under controlled conditions.
Under controlled conditions. Now, what I would say, and I may have a different definition of fear. I have tremendous respect for what that can do to me, and how I can mitigate it. But I could translate that into if someone was pointing a gun at me, I have tremendous respect for what that gun can do to me.
Right.
So that could be fear. I may define it a bit differently, but I'm very familiar with handling snakes. I've handled big cats for years in hostile situations. I was the guy on drug raids that where people who had drugs had dangerous animals and or reptiles guarding their stash, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be one of the first ones in to control that animal so other agents would not get hurt and be able to control the situation. So, lots of pit bulls, lions and tigers, lots of snakes, venomous snakes, piranha, which are not really bad. They kind of have a bad rep, but we'll do another show all about piranha. But
wonderful. In the Amazon?
Yeah, well, that's a little different. But so getting control of these animals was what I did. And, getting control is not capturing and getting in the back of your pickup truck. Getting control may mean getting it into the corner, getting it into a room and shut the door. So, all of those things kind of have to work together. Using the inertia and behavior of that animal or that reptile and not fight it. So that's kind of what I did. So I understand that, fear, when most people see a reptile, is, people sometimes get, physically sick.
Yes.
Just seeing it, right? It's a very strong reaction. And I always say that, that fear of reptiles, people will swear it's inborn, but, humans are born with only two fears. And the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. And you can prove that with the baby, and they're not afraid of a snake. I mean, you could put a cobra, not that we would, but any snake with the baby, and the baby's not inherently afraid of it unless it has sensed that from the parents. So it's learned. It's a cultural situation, but having had guns pointed at me, venomous snakes, being cornered by big cats. So yeah, I can see that. We can see that. So now you take COVID and put that in front of me. Yeah. I mean, where is it? You have the fear ingrained in you that, do I want to open my window or do I not? Does it come in? What do I do when I get the mail? What about an Amazon package? I mean, what is it? Where is it? How does it affect me? To some extent, we still all have those fears, hand washing, mask, distancing, etc. But something you can't see, feel, or touch that makes you sick and can kill you is pretty fearful. I mean, to me, I'm more afraid of that unknown. And that's why I made the reference to, a snake that I could be walking on and step on accidentally will hurt me just as much as it does anyone else, no matter how much I know, no matter how much experience I have. And I have this thing I can't see, feel, or touch like everyone else in the world. And then who do you go to? Because you're all in this, have the same problem. There is no safe haven. There's no anybody you can go visit, get away from. There's none of that available to us, right? So it's kind of a big trap. That's the way I feel. So yeah, I was pretty fearful, and that was a big motivator for me to go out and number one, not to sound selfish, but to protect me and my family. More concerned about my family than me. But, going through that process, it was almost helplessness, because conflicting information from around the world, not knowing what it is, you can't see it coming. All those things are pretty tough to deal with for all of us.
Mm-hmm. So there's a big psychological game going on. Just like a baby, just like the baby who doesn't know to be fearful of a snake. Adults have that whole, we've been so programmed to be afraid of things. I didn't actually have a lot of empathy. People know this who've listened to the show, that my empathy has not been very high about the entire thing until I started really understanding how scared people are. And the reason my empathy's been low is because I've been dealing with my own mysterious, could happen at any time, illness. So when I got my diagnosis for Huntington's, it's exactly the same thing. It's like you can't see what's coming. You don't necessarily know what the symptoms are going to look like. You don't know who else in your family is going to be affected. You don't know how they're going to be affected. You don't know whether it's long-term or short-term. You're not sure how the symptoms are going to look. So a lot of it was very parallel. Mm-hmm. And I remember 11 years or 12 years ago when I got that State of the Union that basically I was alone and I didn't have anyone to talk about it. So that was kind of a gift in a way, because I really had to rely on myself to be well and to navigate through things. So what I think has been a huge difference is that everyone is in the same boat. But they're not, in the same ocean, but they're not necessarily in the same boat. So this whole way that we manage fear is one thing. And then also how we manage our immunity is another thing. So whether that's terrain theory or it's, whatever the latest thing is that people are purporting, you can really talk each other into and out of feeling really great or really feeling awful. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's been a very, it's been sad to watch. And so my empathy, I think, has increased exponentially over the last, 5 or 6 months, because I'm really understanding and remembering how I felt, 12 years ago, and going, man, that's how everybody feels, is they really do feel like this thing could happen at any time to them, that they're concerned that they're going to lose loved ones, and that they can't see it coming. And that's probably the most horrible thing. It's like watching a horror movie. You're just like, you can hear the music, dun, dun,
yeah,
dun, 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 dun. It's like,
absolutely.
you're looking behind you, trying to figure out.
Except we can't see the radioactive mud coming down the street to get us, right?
Exactly right. But, and so to that, one of the, I guess, parallels in my mind has been that what I focused in on really a lot was being well as I could, which was this just very different aspect to dealing with a really critical we'll call it diagnosis. And what I think is cool is that people are now looking at, how do I be well? Which is a different way of looking at their health, So up until 2020, nobody was really looking at, not very many people were looking at that. They weren't choosing to have a lifestyle where they would be building immunity and helping their family to build really strong immunity as well. So you guys made this beautiful shift of going, okay, well, how do I actually take this very serious thing and take it seriously? And I love the word that you use. It's like, become respectful of it. It's like, how do I respect this thing and understand how to deal with it? So what were the things that you've done? What have been your insights? Like, what's your why today, would you say?
Well, going in, it all culminates in immunity based on what I have understood. And it's important to note, I don't really know how to define this, but I'm not a health guy. I mean, I'm not, I don't do stupid things. I mean, I might have a couple beers a year. I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but, I mean, I don't do stupid things, but I'm not, hyper focused on health and eat this kind of food and that kind of food and these vitamins. I'm just kind of going along like a normal guy, and it's not a real focus for me. And so, to me, the things I learned were startling and were life-changing for me. And, again, I'm not that guy. So, but maybe I am now. I don't know.
What were some of the startling things? Because I love that. It's like, I think a lot of people can resonate with that. It's like, I wasn't really paying much attention, just going along. What were the startling things?
Well, startling things are, some very simple things that dramatically affect our body. And then what I started to find out in my research is that almost everything, and that's a huge statement, and it's a subjective statement from my perspective, it all kind of goes back to your immune system and what you eat, and inflammation and immune system. And, we have this inflammation, and, people think of inflammation as, a cut being infected, or you have a sore tooth or all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then you can have inflammation you don't even know about going on in your body, this low grade thing that's just kind of wearing on it. I kind of view it as background noise when you're trying to talk on the phone or you're trying to concentrate. There's this constant irritation going on, and your body's constantly, over there kind of dealing with that, but it leaves it less resources to go deal with something else. So, you only have so many resources to deal with things that come in. I mean, basically my perspective is, and Chris Meiser, my business partner, basically said it during this process very well. He says, well, basically, you have these millions of microbes trying to jump in there and kill you. I mean, every second of every day. And then there's your immune system. And that's basically it. So, and if you think of that and what's really out there, I mean, if people could see the invisible, it's pretty scary stuff. But yet we live in it fine, and we have this miracle called the immune system. So I learned what that did, what kinds of foods, what kinds of things affect it. Was a whole new world and kind of startling for me. It really still is. And you made a good point just a minute ago, which is with COVID, we can't even go to the doctor. I mean, you can't go to the hospital. You couldn't. So you have no. I felt you have no choice. You do have to take care of yourself, like many people have been doing for years. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't get to just go to the doctor and say, fix it. Give me a antibiotic, or take care of this or take care of that, and we're good. Like you take your car to the mechanic. Now you have to start really taking responsibility. And I've seen a cultural shift, a major cultural shift, and I can only speak of the United States, but I expect it's probably worldwide, in that the paradigm has shifted. Everybody's now understanding that doctors, government, all those things that we used to depend on that gave us health security is now really up to us. Yeah. And just the things that, the hand washing, which we were supposed to have been doing anyway, and just general sanitation, that basically, when inside plumbing became a commonplace a few hundred years ago, it transformed the health of the world.
Yes.
Just that one thing. So now I see another additional transformation of let's use it more. Right. And so that's kind of what I see. And I see a personal responsibility in everyone now taking note and acting upon it. That's what I see.
Yeah. And I think that was a big shock for me too, when the thing first started, and I was like, they're running ads for hand washing. And I'm thinking, who doesn't wash their hands? What?
Did you do it enough though?
But right. And
right?
So there's me and then my cousins who are out working, whatever job, working at pharmacies, et cetera, going, oh my gosh, people come in here and they sneeze on me. It's like, we've got to, and I'm in horror going, are you kidding me that people don't actually have that just basic ethical respect for themselves and other people? But really it has been a return to the ethics maybe of, how we treat each other as human beings and ourselves, like our own bodies, and so that's, becoming sensible and sanity returning about that. We can't just run to somebody else and have a solution to all of our problems. So it has been a growing up and an embracing of these, our ability to be well. So one of the things I talk often about on this podcast is the difference between health and wellness. And that, a lot of people think that they get health from an external source versus that wellness comes from inside. And that when you're only ever looking at your body from a biomechanical perspective, which is what allopathic medicine does, is that it looks like, oh, you got this hurt, we'll come in here and we'll give you something to mask that symptom. But now is like this really cool opportunity to create wellness from within yourself. And that, you have people are starting to understand that they're not just their sore elbow or their headache, but that the things that cause it, they can actually at a root level deal with, which is huge insight. When you got millions and millions of people who are, type 2 diabetics, you've got, millions and millions of people dealing with suicide ideation. Levels of suicide are up 300% in Canada. Kids going in to eating disordered clinics is up 98%. And I'm sure, like to your points, I'm pretty certain that would be parallel worldwide in developed countries, that there's these huge increases in people struggling with mental health issues. And so it's a beautiful divine time for people to look at what are the tools that I can actually put in my toolbox in 2021 and moving forward to actually recapture my health. So, and that wellness being the perspective is how to actually create this well system that's working perfectly for me from the inside out. So I bet you have some insights from the past year that you have learned. Can you share those? Yeah.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do was take away and or control the fear. of the unknown.
Yeah.
So, and now we're kind of talking about the wellness. So, the path I took, the things I did, may, have helped. A lot of that stuff is subjective to the individual, and whether it helped as much as I thought it did or not, I sure felt better about it. Right? Because I did it. Like, took vitamin D and zinc and some airborne, and it's like, I'm doing something about it. That was kind of the start, right?
Right.
And I'm doing something about it. So, you read on the internet, which is, of course, the undisputable authority of truth.
Right.
You read on the internet, oh, if you take vitamin D3, you have a 71% chance less of this. Oh, take zinc and you have a 42%. I was like 850,000% guaranteed I was never going to get COVID. Right?
Yes.
Because I took it all, and it probably canceled each other. There's no science behind it. I just was, probably treating my fear as much or more as I was treating my physical body, just to do something. Had to do something to deal with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that led me to, some other, I guess you'd call them nutraceuticals that, are geared to deal with the immunity and the inflammation, and, that whole process has just been, those were things I could feel. Those were things that made a difference in me that are non-COVID related, because, I never did catch COVID. So I can stand here and absolutely say, hey, it worked. Because you don't know, right? But so, none of my family did. That's certainly a blessing. And but then when you can physically feel differences in a week or two, and when you take some things, and concentration, joint pain, sleeping, all of those things, that makes a big difference, because I was having trouble sleeping. I was worried about COVID, and then, partially because, I felt it working on other parts of my body. This feels good. Digestion, all these things that were, just there, but they weren't horrible. Just kind of aging pains, if you will, just kind of all went away.
So COVID's done you a favor then?
Absolutely. Maybe, and I don't want to be disrespectful, because, many people have suffered huge losses.
Yes.
But maybe it has, in that it can prepare us better for another pandemic or the next one, because, they do occur, and maybe help prevent it. And that's really part of the next step. In the next stage, we see COVID hopefully diminishing somewhat. We're not really sure yet. But then, what can we do is to incorporate things in our lifestyle that protect us and our fellow human being. So, we don't get it, we don't infect others, and kind of help everybody get to a better level. Not that it's a cure, but it's a way to mitigate it that makes it more tolerable, if it's at all possible.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. It's like if people just think a little bit about their own history prior to COVID, in the world, there was the flu, in the world, there was the measles, in the world, like all of these viruses and stuff track all over the world. And, everyone has been, for the most part, subjected to something, and you either upgrade or you don't, or so you either upgrade your body or you leave the planet. And that's not a new story as of 2020. We know that people who are immunocompromised, or, that they've got some health problems, that they're not the ones that necessarily make it through those times. But I also laugh because, people will go, well, my dad died at 83 and he had COVID. And I go, well, what else did he have? And so they'll list all the things. And I said, do you realize that we're actually here in a mortal body, right? That somehow we've lost the plot just a little bit on that we're in a carcass that actually does have an expiry date. And so while we can do these wonderful things to be well and to operate optimally, like having great memory, good joints, having great sleep, making love to somebody that we really care about and feeling like we want to do that because we have the energy to do that. Those things are all the most divine part of the human experience. But we also know that it does have an end date. And so a lot of the fear, I would just say to my friends, well, we're going out at some point, right? Like, you do remember that this is our experience here in this human body. So I think a lot of people have become very, very afraid of death and dying for some odd reason. And, it kind of lose the sanity factor about that it happens. And that one of the sad parts, though, really around the whole last year was that being with people when they were making their transition was not part of, the landscape, at least in lots of parts of Canada. Like, you could not be with the people that you love as they were transitioning. So hopefully we gain some insight about that in the next short, order of time. And we're able to kind of come back to our human senses about that.
Yes.
Yeah. But in the meantime, let's do what we can to be as well as we possibly can, and encourage other people to do the same. I love that you recognize that you're just kind of regular guy and that you could do some things to influence yourself by taking lots of things that you didn't really know how that combination would work out. But you actually have this, you guys have developed a nutraceutical in the background, over the past number of years that actually has become applicable to what the landscape we're facing right now. And that's why I particularly wanted to have you on the show, because I haven't promoted any supplements of any kind. And the show's been on for 7 years. And the reason being is that I didn't find anything that was super credible. So I just went, I can't put my name behind that. But when I was investigating and researching what you guys are putting forward, I thought, like, people need to have ways of being well that's easy. One of the things when I got my diagnosis 10, 12 years ago is I started doing a ketogenic diet. Like, I researched like a mad woman to, get myself healthy. Most people don't have the time, and they don't have the impetus, and they don't have the actual ingredients to be able to do that. It's very, very difficult to put together a milligram of this and a spit of that and a shot of this. And, I look like a witch, but I'm not one. So it's like, I'm not back in my cauldron making some brew up. I'm not doing that. So I thought, but that's, the old healers would do that. They'd be making these beautiful concoctions from the herbs in the forest and from what was, available in nature. And so again, when I came upon what your product is, I went, wow, this is really incredible. So I just love it if you could share some of I know that you don't want to talk about the science too much necessarily, but just about what your products can help people to do and to achieve.
Sure. And I think a good lead into this is that over the last couple of years, we were exposed prior to COVID to some cancer treatments, and standard of care now includes some elements of immunotherapy. So standards of care, regular hospitals, the Cleveland clinics, Mayo clinics, et cetera, they're starting to incorporate immunotherapies in their cancer treatments because they now realize that, cancer in same type of cancer is not the same in two different people. It's how our immune system deals with it and how our biology interacts with it. So everything is very individualized in treatment. So I understood that transition and thought that was very interesting. So then we got involved with Therapeutic Solutions, and I did a tremendous amount of research on Therapeutic Solutions and their product Quadrimune because it was like overload, because almost everything I was hearing was exactly what I wanted to hear. It was a focus on dealing with the issues that I was focused on too, which really everyone is. So it's very simple. It's made from natural compounds, vegetables, fruits, different things. I mean, and people say, oh, you need to eat your broccoli. Well, that's not just the wives' tale. There's real science in there. And then, as you, I'm sure, well know, and we've not discussed this, but 150 years ago, that's how people were treated. By what all these things that people put together. You made a joke about the witch thing, but there is science behind that process. So, and then there's many pharmaceuticals, since I was in the production and in the snake venom side, I also learned about how many plants today are that we used to use 150 years ago to cure a headache, and they take that same white oak bark, and that's part of what's in aspirin, and they sell it to us. So, there's a lot of herbal things in the pharmaceuticals we take today that we're not cognitively aware of. It's not advertised, but that all was brought forward by the pharmaceutical industry. So, I start to look at Quadrimune. I talked to the inventor of it, Tim Dixon, and he's a very very dynamic individual, knows a lot of science, and really is based on solid things. So again, I'm just the guy. I've seen supplements and nutraceuticals, and this miracle pill will make you lose weight. Run a marathon. You just have to take one a day, and the third day you're invincible, right? You can stop a bullet. So, having been through that my whole life, I'm like, okay, let's see. So then I do research, and I can look now. I look on the FDA website, and I look at clinical studies where real physiological things are happening in people's blood, and it's being measured. This is not now anecdotal. This is real science. Mm-hmm. And these clinical trials are run on the FDA website. That's pretty important. I know that. I'm familiar with that, generally, and that's high levels of credibility. So then I look at the patents they filed, numerous patents. I believe Quadrimune initially started with, concussion, nerve damage, brain function, things like that. But they expanded it out into, neural paths in your brains being expanded. Some level of interference with some kinds of cancers. I mean, they have like 10 or 12 patents that they filed after clinical trials showed them significant results. So I'm not a scientist, but I've been around it, as we discussed, and these are important things to me, and kind of shows proof. So I'm like, I think I should try it. So I tried it. I was a little apprehensive. It's like, am I going to pass out? Am I going to be
Right.
jittery? What's going to happen to me? So I just picked a day that I didn't have much going on, because I really was apprehensive about
Mm-hmm.
taking a pill, and it did nothing. I felt nothing. And so, but after about a week, and it wasn't a big change, but like I said, normal aches and pains. I noticed, I used to wake up, 3-4 times a night, and now I wake up once, maybe twice. It's like, well, that's kind of interesting, because this is a 20 or 30-year pattern that I'm just used to. I feel fine, but it's just the way it is. Turn over, go back to sleep. It's like, wow, I remember last time I looked at the clock was 2, and now it's 6. It's time to get up. Yeah. But am I really? I don't want to. Am I supposed to get up? I should wake up 2 more times before I get up. So it was a little bit odd, right? I felt almost cheated, although I was rested. And then just general pain, gone. Mm-hmm. And this was not. I mean, I'm not talking about I have a bad knee or a torn ACL or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not severe injury, but just kind of general aches and pains. And then, things like concentration, I notice, although, I'm certainly not impaired, but, I have a better memory. I can go through paperwork faster, easier, just things like that I noticed about myself. And I do generally, and have my whole life, pay attention to my body and pay attention to my mind and kind of understand what's going on. I'm very, very aware of that. And again, all of this is anecdotal and only applied to me. Right. But when I take the combination of the clinical research, the trials, talking to Tim, who is very, very educated on how the body reacts to these substances and how he isolates them. I've been to their facility, amazing attention to detail, as you would hope and expect. Mm-hmm. In the process, and the patents, I mean, to me, I feel like I'm well protected. And, one of their patents is addressing parts of COVID. And that's really the one I started with that said, oh, COVID, I'm taking it.
In.
But yeah, I did my research, but as I did on even vitamin D and magnesium and D3 and all those things that we've heard of that mitigates COVID. And so, with all that added together, it's really been a change for me, and really the first time I've ever bought into this kind of a process for my health. And when I say this kind of a process, the realization that inflammation and the immune system pretty much control everything that, is important to us in our bodies, our mind, our body, and all those functions. It's an amazing connection, between your gut health, your immune system, and how that really controls everything that's trying to attack your body. And, we've always known cancer cells are in your body. I mean, they're there ready to go. Your immune system kills them. So it all kind of goes back to the immune system and inflammation. So now making that stronger, to me, only makes common sense. It's just a common sense thing. It's really no different than that. It's not emotional. It's just, it makes so much sense.
Right. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It is common sense returning to sanity. But I do want to ask you a question about emotion, because often when our brain function isn't that hot, or we've got problems with inflammation in the body, it can show up as a lack of emotional control, or a inability to kind of emotionally respond to things appropriately. Do you have anything to say about that from your own experience? Did you find any changes in your emotive state?
I did. I felt that, even when I started taking it, I still felt a little bit of a panic every day, because, there's a barrage of information, whether it's on your phone, on TV, on the news, other people talking, there's all this information, everybody's scared, and you're scared. And then, the reaction to that is, I guess I felt like I had too much coffee. For those who drink coffee, I was just kind of tense, a little bit on edge, a little bit snippy. So one would say, in a polite sense. And then that's gone away. I feel very calm. I feel protected. And I'm talking about from an emotional and psychological standpoint. Now, one could argue, do I feel protected because I think it's good stuff and I think it works? Or like the placebo effect, right? Or whether it really works. Now, I'm here to tell you, it really makes no difference to me, because from an emotional standpoint, I feel so much better that that's not really relevant to me. The process and the results I feel physically make me feel more confident emotionally as we relate to the COVID threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I appreciate your vulnerability, because I do think that is a very common report from people, is that they have felt very vulnerable and not quite sure what to do. And it's almost like that trying to get your foundation or footing underneath you again. And how do you actually do that? So everyone's going to have different ways of doing that. A lot of people, it's been a struggle because they have gone and defaulted to their old behaviors, so whether that's drinking, more pharmacy, porn, gambling from home, because, it's like all of the things that the government has put in front of us as the table that has been laid before us to be able to, meet that emotional need or the anxiety, to quell anxiety. All of those old triggers and the ways of responding to them have been right in front of us this whole time, because that's what you've been able to access on the internet. And so, you turn on your TV, hey, not feeling that good. That's okay. Just like spend $500 on the next gambling thing, or, whatever it is. Right. And so it's this very wise, it's the wisdom of going, wow, I am vulnerable here. And I don't want to repeat the old behavior that I had, whatever that thing is. I want to actually take this opportunity to get a real foundation that's healthy underneath of me in order to propel my life forward in a way that is respectful of this body that I've been given and this mind that I've been given. What I think is incredible is when people do that, they have so much more energy to do the things that they really love to do, like engage with people in better conversations, fall more in love with their partner, fall more in love with their families, like do things with their families and be with their families because they have the emotional energy and the physical energy to do it. And they're feeling more certain. So instead of also adding to that fear thing and going, oh, you guys, I don't know for sure if we're going to make it through today, you instead say, you know what, I feel pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. I think that I'm feeling pretty confident about how things are going. And do I have all the answers? No. But honestly, I didn't have all the answers yesterday when I thought I had all the answers before COVID hit. I was just under this illusion that I did. But yeah, so it's a fun little game that we play with ourselves. But I will speak to the 𝑸𝒖𝒻𝙀 because I decided I would take it also. And so in 30 days, and I stay in very good shape. I mean, I've been taking care of my health very diligently for well over a decade. But one of the things that I noticed, and for those of you who actually haven't had a chance to see my interview with Tim Dixon, make sure you go and find that because Tim and I talk about it a little bit more in depth. But one of the things that the 𝑸𝒖𝒻𝙀 does is it scrubs your gut biome. And then it cleans up your brain biome. And so the scrubbing of the gut biome means that you're actually going to have potentially some physical getting rid of the toxins in your body. And that I definitely have noticed like improved connection between my emotions and my thoughts, better sleep. And I wouldn't say joint stuff because I don't really have joint thing, but the sleep thing has definitely changed. And I feel lighter in my body. And I don't know if I've actually lost any weight. I'm not sure if I had to lose any weight, but that I definitely feel like my digestive process is much, much better, like 1,000 times better. So that's been great, really, really. And especially coming out of winter here in Canada. I don't know if anyone else found that winter was a challenge, but emotionally, mentally, physically, when you're locked inside and it's freezing outside, you're not running outside to run off the last thing you just ate. So the 𝑸𝒖𝒻𝙀 has definitely helped. So it's been a very, very good experience. We've only got a couple minutes left, Steve. Do you want to speak to anything else that you have for insights or things you want to encourage people to think about as they go forward into the last part of 2021?
I think, related to this subject, I encourage everybody to, do research, understand, the real things that can help us, both mind and body. And I think the most important thing, and this again is from my perspective, is how do we get control of our psychological health and perspective? And, I don't have this problem, but my daughter does, and know many people. Just think people had to stay home and sacrifice their jobs to school their kids, which is completely different than what we're used to, not having the kids there. Everybody's close together, and there's a lot of different psychological triggers that I think get magnified. So anything we can do to research, understand, and start to mitigate that process, without performing the addiction, as you said, that helps it get better, is really what I'd like to leave people with. I did the research. It probably, now that we've talked about it and kind of quantified it, I bet you could do it in half an hour. Look up the patents on 𝑸𝒖𝒻𝙀, look up the clinical trials on 𝑸��𝒖𝒻𝙀. There's tons of information out there about it. It's been out for several years. This is not, new, but it's now very appropriate, and it does help us through what we're dealing with now. I'm not saying it cures anything, but it's a help, and we need all the little pieces of armor and all the little pieces of help we can get, and it's up to us to do it for ourselves, and that's both physically and emotionally, as we hopefully recover from COVID and then learn things that help us, mitigate troubling things or pandemics coming up in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Well put, well put. And anyone can find products on the masteryourlife.ca website. I'd love to have you back if you're game for another conversation.
Would love to. Absolutely.
Okay. Wonderful.
Very enjoyable.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Share, share, share. Remember that other people are struggling right now. And so if you can help them by sharing this good message with them, then you've done something maybe to affect not only them in their life, but the other people that they truly care for. I invite you all to love yourselves, love each other, mind your mind. That's all for us. Bye for now.
Thank you for being a part of our program today. Master Your Life is a presentation of Leaha Mattinson Enterprises, Inc. Join us next time on Master Your Life, helping you to discover the very best of you.